Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly webinar. This is Patrick in Seattle, and we do these webinars, try to do them every week, but we have been on vacation a couple weeks, so it's glad to have you back. Thanks for being here. I have with me Don Lumbatten, who has helped me with the webinar today, and he did the webinar back in February when we started this. This is part 2 of a webinar on how to create a dashboard using a SharePoint form. And I'd like to welcome Don. Don, can you say hello?
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
We are recording this webinar, so if my voice wavers at any point in time, please let me know. There is a chat window. You can just tell me that way. And Don, please feel free to interrupt me if, for whatever reason, the audio gets worse. Today, we're actually doing like I said, a part 2 of a webinar we started in February, and that's on dashboards. We've done dashboard webinars in the past, and for those of you who have been watching us over the years, if you go to our new website here and click on webinar, you can find a list of all the previous webinars here by clicking see more down below here, and you can see the long list here of webinars we've done. If you just do a Control F and search for dashboard, you'll find that we've done lots of them over the years. They're highlighting here. And so it's a very popular topic, and that's what we're doing today is we're talking about a dashboard. I'm going to show you a couple forms, one form for our leave request and one form that does a dashboard on top of it. But we've done lots of dashboards, and in the February 23rd webinar, we actually showed a dashboard for invoices. Before we get started, I just have a quick poll question for all of you. First question I have is, were you here on February 23rd? So we'll do that question and see how many of you are repeats. And I'm just going to fill this out myself here. Looks like, well, it looks like we got most of you were not here or you forgot. So we have about, I guess 35 to 40% of you. Somewhere in that range, about a third of you were here for that, so I'm glad to see that. We're going to do one more poll, and that is we want to, well, actually, before we do the second poll, I'll just explain a little bit more about what we're going to do today because it gives us some context. On the 23rd, and we have slides here. We took the slide deck from our February 23rd webinar, and we added 3 slides for today. We basically, over the last 2 months, roughly, we have made some refinements in this dashboard technology. We've added 3 new techniques, and we're going to be talking about those 3 techniques today. In addition to those 3 techniques, there are some reasons why you want to use dashboards, and that's what we talked about on February 23rd, basically to quickly collect your data. And I'll show a couple examples in a second, focus attention, and get stats on your process. Let's take a quick look at a webinar, our dashboard from, let's see here, from today's, this is from last February. So this is a quick webinar. So we have a library with, it looks like about 10 different invoices. These are sample data that Don created. And this is a really simple form. In fact, let's open, before I open one of them, here's the dashboard. So the dashboard essentially gives us a quick color-coded view of the library. And this is useful for a number of things. One is if you want to add, do an action on a couple of them, you can do a bulk close, for example. So we could take these 2 on top here, and we could bulk assign them to, let's say, closed or completed. And when we do that, it's going to submit them back to the library and color code them correctly. So they're now in the completed list. So that's one of the benefits of these dashboards is this ability to bulk assign. The other benefit is just quickly seeing what needs attention. So these 2 on top are red. Obviously, we need to do something with those. And the dashboard is actually reflecting what's in the library. So if I refresh this and take a look at the status here, these weren't sorted correctly, but we had this. We had 3 of these on hold. Actually, 2 of these are on hold. These 2 right here. Now, if I refresh this, you can see that they're now closed. So it is actually writing back to the library. And also we could, of course, go in here and we could take one of these items, and, well, we can't edit them, but if we did edit them, I guess we forgot to get the links working. If this was edited, it would also reflect in the dashboard. Now that's our February 23rd demo. So that's what we saw a couple months ago. Now, so that's a quick view of why a dashboard would be important. Now, to create this dashboard, what we did was we just used InfoPath. We used InfoPath and Forms Viewer, this new technology which we're calling the future of forms for SharePoint. And let me just show you what that dashboard looks like. And the benefit of using a form for a dashboard is that, first of all, you don't need to use SharePoint Designer. SharePoint Designer in 2013 and 2010 no longer has what we call the WYSIWYG, the what you see is what you get layout. You have to use HTML. So with the InfoPath Designer, you still get the WYSIWYG layout. So here's the dashboard that we created for the invoices, and I think this is the correct one. Right. And you can see here that this is just a form, and the form is going to be querying items when it opens up. Let's take a look at these queries here. So the form on load is querying the data from the library, and the library is just a data connection, invoice request library. And then it's going to be displaying the data, and because it's InfoPath, we can add quick highlighting. So what Don has done here is added this red highlighting if it's not started, green if it's not completed, yellow if it's in progress, and so on. So this is a really easy way of quickly showing a heat map or a lay of the land, one of these quick status of your current process. And you can, of course, filter things. Our sample library is just a few items, but you can scale these things. In fact, that's kind of what we're talking about today, is we've actually developed many dashboards for our customers over the last few months using Forms Viewer, and we've learned a few things in that process. And that's really what I want to talk about today, are those three things. One of the things we've learned is that when you're dealing with large forms, you need to do things a little bit differently because the data, there's so much data. And so that's the second question I have for you today. We have the next poll is asking you, let's imagine for a moment that you want to create a dashboard for one of your forms. So think of that form. How many fields are in that form? And you may not know. You may think, well, I don't know. I have to go count. But if you do know, please let us know, because this is one of the things that we're really touching upon today, is when you do have a medium to large form, which isn't uncommon. In fact, it looks like about 70% of you are in the same boat. Then you need to do something differently because the number of columns is too great, or you have repeating data that cannot be reflected in those columns. So thanks for that. It looks like about 72% of you, is that right? 72% are in the medium to large category. Nobody is extra large or monstrosity, but we do have 29% of you in the small category. So close that poll. So this is the topics for today, is to handle those medium to large forms, and also to show faster load times. In fact, let me show you the load time for the previous one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click on this. This is Chrome, which is a little bit faster than IE. I click on this. We're launching the form in Forms Viewer. Forms Viewer is faster than InfoPath Form Services, and it's still working with 365 just fine. So that's about, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, not a lot of data though. So if we get a lot of data, it slows down, and the reason for that is it's pulling everything in on load. All the data is being queried, as you just saw in the form. So we're going to show another example where we don't do that, and it's a little faster. That's another technique, is not to pull everything in on load, but rather to do filtering. And then we'll also show how you can update the status, just like we did for February 23rd demo, with this new technique of handling large data. Okay, so any questions for me, just put them in the chat window. Don, any comments or feedback at this point?
No, not at that moment. We're good.
Great. And I'm just doing the audio. We will let Don do some demos in a second. He's got a connection concern with his, in Manila tonight, there's apparently some maintenance going on in the city, and we don't want to have a webinar that stops in the middle, so I'm doing the voiceover here. So once again, dashboards are tools to allow you to quickly see your process, get a sense of where it is, and you want to be able to stay on top of things with minimal amount of investment in terms of your time. You want to take a quick look, get a glance, and get the information you need. So we use the form to do it, once again, because it gives you an easy canvas to create these dashboards. It's easy to do. It allows you to do the formatting and the coloring. No code is involved. And it works very well in SharePoint with Forms Viewer and with InfoPath. And Forms Viewer is a replacement technology for InfoPath. I do have a slide at the end talking more about Forms Viewer. Many of you are familiar with it. So we wanted to allow people to bulk edit items, so we added this this save, this update, multiple items at once. You saw me do that, and of course we've got the coloring in the, and these are slides from the previous webinar. The coloring allows us to quickly see what is red, what needs attention, or what was wrong. Here's our support dashboard, which looks a little bit different today. We've actually modified it over the last couple months, but you can see here this is a more complex dashboard, but quickly tells us you know, which tickets we need to look at, how many we have. Okay, so let's talk about the new techniques. So the number one technique I want to talk about today is this ability to handle lots of data, so your large forms. Now, when we're doing this with lots of data, let's just quickly see the demo first. So we have a leave request dashboard here, and this is, once again, it's just a form that's opening, and it's we're using our Forms Viewer technology to quickly display the data. So now, this is pulling data from a leave request library, which has quite a bit more data in it, but it's still not what I'd call a medium. Well, it's probably a medium form, but it's probably not a large form. So what we're doing here, though, is we're pulling the data in and we're color coding it like we saw before. What's different about this solution is that if we go in here and edit one of these items, like let's say go back to our submitted here, and we want it to approve one of these items. And I know there's some old ones in here. I'm not sure here. Maybe this is sample data. Let's say I want to go through here and approve these. I'm not sure why they're not approved yet. Maybe it's because of sample data. And once again, we can set these to approve. And now what it's doing is it's actually querying the entire XML for each one of these items, and it's going to be submitting it back. Now the reason for that is that if you have a lot of columns in your data, you want to be able to update those columns. The previous technique was to use submit to SharePoint list, where the library is the list. And when we do submit to SharePoint list, the problem is that it's complex to set up the mapping. So one of the problems with the previous technique was that it took time to set up the mapping. In fact, let me show you the previous technique in the form here. So this is the, I believe this is,
Patrick, it was doing a submit to SharePoint, but
okay, so
copying the XML.
So Don, what was the issue then with when we had all these columns and these large forms? Can you more succinctly state what the issue was and why we're doing this technique today?
Well, when we did this, we were only doing it for a small library, which is only for the demo. But when we actually did it for a customer, she had a large library, so that's why we had to figure out a different approach. Now, what this did was it queried the library, and it requires all the columns to be promoted in order for us to resubmit it back to the library.
Okay, and what was the issue with that?
The issue with that is that this form or dashboard only handles libraries with fewer columns.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How many? How many columns?
This one has just around 5 or 6 columns,
Mm-hmm.
and the customer had like around 10 or 11 columns, and
Was it because it was slow? What was the issue when they were doing it?
It was performance issue.
Okay. Okay. So so thanks, Don, and you know, I'm just not completely I'm aware of the issue, but you did a much better job of stating it. So here's the command from the previous dashboard: submit to SharePoint. And like Don said, we're submitting the XML, right? We're still submitting the XML, but because we're having to cobble it together, so we're creating these XMLs right on the fly, and I guess you can see it right here, and then we're submitting them. And that works fine if you've got 10 fields, but if you've got 40 fields or 100 fields or something, you're in a more complex form, then it doesn't work because you end up having to create this XML using a concat or something, and it just doesn't work very well. Am I saying this correctly, Don?
So that's correct.
Okay, great. Now let's take a look at the new technique. And here's the new dashboard. This dashboard, when we do the update, let's just go to the rules. The update is actually, once again, we're using a centralized logic here to fire the rules. So it's setting a value across a repeating structure, and then it's going to be running the logic. So the first thing we're doing here on load is we have a new type of a data connection. You'll see that underneath data connections in this sample, we have get leave request XML. So that actually queries the entire XML for that line item in the library. And by actually going in here and setting this trigger, you can see the trigger once again is setting this value, and it's setting the value, what is it here?
It's a submit field at the
Where is it at? It's in the...
It's a different data connection. Requests.
So this is firing when it hits submit here. There's all these rules that submit this to the library, and this command is going to be different. It's the same command as before, but we're actually pointing it at the secondary data connection, which is the entire XML. And if we look at that secondary data connection, submit to SharePoint leave request, I believe that's well, it's seeking. Yeah, there's two data connections here. There's the one that's submit, and then there's the one that we're getting the data from, which is the second one here, get leave request XML. Thank you, Don. So that leave request XML, I want to show you that again here because that's the actual XML from the leave request form. Let's take a look at the leave request form, and you can see here's a leave request form. In fact, if I fill this out, I didn't show you this yet, but if I fill this out, hopefully this one will open. It'll look very similar to what we saw in the designer there. And this is our leave request form for taking vacations and taking time off. So you can see our leave request form there. It's got a mobile view and a desktop view, and it's got policy. So it's, it's a pretty simple form, 40 fields or so. If we look at this in the designer, look at the data source for a second here. So over on the right where we have fields, you can see it's got users, dates, help section, approval, and some status fields. Now the same fields are represented here in the secondary data source. We pull that XML in. So we're pulling the data from that leave request into the dashboard. And then we're changing the value, the status value of it, form status, and then we're submitting it back out. So the technique here allows us to handle any number of fields in your library item. So you can have doesn't matter if they're promoted or not, you can edit any of the fields and update any of them. So it's a much more scalable feature, and that's really the first technique there, is to, instead of using submit to SharePoint where we're actually concatenating the data together to form the XML, we're actually using an entire secondary data source to both query and submit. Now because we have to query multiple items, we saw the bulk update, we have to actually go through and query them one at a time. And so we've used this data connection here to trigger that. And what Don does is he triggers this submit field by just setting it equal to true or yes. And because this is repeating, it's going to trigger this for every single item that has been selected. So if they select it using this this checkbox over here, then it will fire the submit. And before it gets to submit, you can see that up above we're actually getting the XML from the library. And the way we do that is we're updating the data connection to dynamically change it to pull in the XML that we want to change. And this is using a, let's see, where is the update, Don? I think it's in here, I'm guessing. So this centralized logic gets set, and we get the leave request. Before we do that, we change the connection URL. So we're using another command here called change connection URL to switch the data connection to the new form. So it goes through iteratively, one after another, setting the URL, querying it, changing the status value, and submitting it. And because it's doing that over and over again, we're able to use one data connection for all of those XMLs, no matter how many we have, and it submits them all. So that's the technique. I know it's kind of complex, but it is a good technique. So you get flexibility. It allows you to update your XML on the fly with that change connection URL, and you get scalability, so it handles any size of XML. Questions on this? Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is these status updates. So, Don, do you want to talk quickly about this?
Well, you've already discussed that earlier.
Oh, that's good. I guess we're moving right along here then. So the key thing with the simplifying the status updates is we're not mapping. I mean, the other technique which I alluded to originally was to map things to a list or a library. And because we're not doing that, it's a much simpler approach. We don't have to concatenate date fields together. We just modify the status field that we want to modify, or whatever field it's going to be, to update it. So it's really just setting that field's value and then submitting the entire XML. We don't have to worry about mapping it to the library. We don't have to worry about concatenating all these fields together so that it looks just similar to before. And the way we did this, once again, was we used a secondary data connection that retrieves the entire XML, and then we used an iterative approach to change the connection over and over again, pulling in the new values. Now this works really well when you're modifying, bulk editing 5 to 10 at a time, but if you've got 100 or 200, you're not going to want to use this approach because it's too slow. But what we found is that when people are using their dashboards, most of the time they are status dashboards, and they want to go in and they want to mark 5 to 10 to 20 or maybe 30 or 40 as processed or approved. They don't necessarily want to do all of them approved. They want to read them first. So this actually works really well for most dashboards. All right, so then finally let's talk about the time improvement here. So this library that we showed here, let me just go back to the leave request dashboard. The load time is about, I don't know, I want to say it's 3 or 4 seconds, but there it is again. And this is not a great example of a large library because we've only got about, I don't know, 100 items, maybe 50 items in here. So it's pretty fast to load. But we want to keep our forms in this 3 to 5 second range when they open. And that's because people, I think there's fatigue for people who are trying to open something on the web and it takes 20 seconds. You definitely do not want something in the 10 to 20 second range. You want something that's going to be very quick. Now this library is using our dev instance of Forms Viewer. So we've done some important performance improvements to cache the form template so that the second time it opens it's much faster. We're going to be rolling out these Forms Viewer improvements next week, probably on Monday or Tuesday, probably early Monday. And they speed up things dramatically. So if you've got a large form that's taking 10 seconds to open in Forms Viewer, that'll come down on Monday. But the other thing we're doing here, which is interesting, is we're not actually querying everything on open. So if you look at the logic again here for finished loading, you can see that we are querying some fields. We want to look at just one status, those forms that are submitted. We query those. And the way we do that is pretty simple. We set the value. We want to say, look, we only want the items that are submitted. So there's a query here that is, maybe Don, you can explain this to the team here. The query leave request logic here is, so what is this doing? So this is actually, the form logic is setting query leave request, and then there's some rules on this. Let's take a look at that. Don, any comments here? Could you want to quickly walk people through this?
Okay, so on form load, it sets the field. Could you expand the values field? It sets the submitted only to true, and when this is true, it's going to put a filter onto the query field, and it's going to set it to submitted only, and then after that, it's going to trigger the query here at the leave requests query library.
Kind of hard to find that because you got the rules in different places, but one of the things we're doing with Forms Designer, which is our new designer to replace InfoPath Designer, coming hopefully this summer, is we're going to make it easier to debug these rules in the browser. But you can see here that he's querying the leave request library, and he's only going to pull back the ones that are submitted. So that reduces the amount of data that's coming across the wire, and it makes the form open faster. So that's the third technique that we wanted to mention. It looks like we do have a comment or a question. Let's take a quick look. And oh, it's just a comment. Thank you, Mark. Yes, we want to reduce the fatigue among our form users. And the cloud is one new thing that they're not used to. And so when people are in the cloud today, you definitely want to use the best practice of forms should open in less than 5 seconds. When you're in the form, tabbing should be instantaneous. You shouldn't have any delays. You might click on a button or do a query or a filter, and that may take a few seconds, but people expect that. They're clicking on something, they're doing something, so they expect there to be a delay. When you submit the form, we have a little more leniency, or a little more what's the word I want to use? It doesn't matter if it takes 10 seconds on submit because people are done. They're not going to do anything more. They may want to see that it was submitted correctly, but they're just going to submit and go on and do something different, go get a cup of coffee or something. So the submit doesn't necessarily need to be as fast as the initial query. And then when they're in the form, we all obviously want things to go quickly. I've got one more demo I think I want to show you. And before I do that, though, do we have any questions on these techniques? We will be packaging up these forms and sending them to you. We've got the presentation along with the dashboards for the leave request form and the leave request form itself. And then we also gave you, we're going to send the XSNs from the 23rd of February just as a comparison. And you can take a look at these by right-clicking the XSNs and choosing Edit in the Designer. So the other demo I wanted to show, let me see if I can quickly get it. Don, while I'm trying to find this demo here, can you actually, let's see here, do you want to say anything more about what we demoed today?
Let me see.
Just give me just talk, say something, because I need to I want to get this. I didn't plan on showing you this demo, but it made me think of a demo we did, and I wanted to pull up this other example if I can find it. And I might not be able to find it, but we do a lot of forms here, and
one thing about this approach is that you need to use the curls command insert PI. What it does is that it inserts a processing instruction into the XML you're about to send. And why do you need it? It's because processing instructions are required for InfoPath forms. It gives instructions to the info path forms. Let's say the location of where the form is published, the name of the template, the info path version, and etc. And that's very important since it will not the forms will not open up properly if you don't have it.
Thank you, Don. I'm still looking for that other demo. It looks like I may not be able to find the location here for that other demo. So anyway, there are some techniques. We'll talk more about performance in the future. And I want to just quickly do a shout out and let people know that we do have training coming up in a couple weeks. We have a special going on right now, 20% off the training class. Obviously, if you've come to training before and it was in the last year, you can audit the class for free. But we do have a new training coming up, new content, the first week in May. We'd love to have you in the class. You can get to our training content by just clicking on Qdabra.com, and underneath education you can register for the class, and we'd love to see you in the class. We have a discount code, and if you are interested, let me know and we'll send you that discount code. The other thing I wanted to briefly mention is we are rapidly onboarding FormZero customers these days, and if you haven't heard of FormZero, I encourage you to take a look at our website. We have created this wonderful migration path for your forms. It doesn't require conversion of your existing forms, but it adds extra features, speeding up the form, and you're using the underlying InfoPath format. So it's a much easier migration path, and very low cost, zero to low cost. We only charge for the time we spend, and for high usage scenarios where you want to open thousands of forms per month. We do have to pay Microsoft for the online Azure service, which behind the scenes is taking apart the InfoPath form template and serving it up to the client. So there's some information here about FormZero, and if you're interested, please let us know. We're more than happy to help you out with your form conversion. And like I said, there is no conversion. We just set up FormZero app, turn it on, and your existing form library will then open in Forms Viewer. So if you got problems with InfoPath forms where they're not opening today in 365, FormZero would be one option to revive or resuscitate those forms. Thanks, Jane, for that comment, and thanks for the. Obviously, we've put a lot of effort into our new site here, and I'm really happy we finally updated our site. It's great to have you guys all here, and we hope to have you here next week. This is incorrect. We're not doing form tips on 222, but we are going to be looking at probably DBXL 3.2 next week, and that's for 27. We have a new version of DBXL coming out, version 3.2, and that is got a lot of new features and some bug fixes. We'll be talking about the new features. Basically, we're very close to shipping, and we're going to do an open door and answer any questions you have, and also talk about what we've done in the last 4 months with DBXL. DBXL is our accelerator tool that we call our flagship tool for form solutions. You can look at it up here. We've had it out there for over 10 years now. Lots of customers using it to connect their forms to a database and make their form solutions truly scalable. And we do have the Azure version as well. So if you're interested in DBXL, please don't hesitate to ask us about it. And we hope you all have a wonderful day there. Thanks for being here in this short webinar. Talk to you next week.